this one felt the most like me. It felt the most like the kind of music, not that it's the music that I want to make, but the music that I already have within me, and I have to make this.
This is Champagne is Also a Band podcast. One songwriter, one song. I'm Sven, your host for a journey into the music of Champaign-Urbana. Recorded in the Blue Box studio with a songwriter from the Champaign-Urbana music scene, past or present. Champagne is Also a Band podcast is proud to be a part of the Champagne Showers Podcast Network. Welcome to Champagne is Also a Band podcast. Today, I have IamLostTwo. And you may know IamLostTwo from such groups as Half House Studios, the Hip Hop Collective, the UIUC HIDEOUT. IamLostTwo. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me.
Today, we're going to be listening to your song, Grounded. So without further ado, let's listen to the song. Welcome back. IamLostTwo. My first and favorite question to always ask is, what came first? Was it the lyrics or was it the music?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would definitely say the lyrics technically came first, because it actually started off as a poem that I was writing about a very specific event that I kind of went through. I was actually planning on just using it just like as like a little diary entry. I have a diary / journal of stuff that I kind of put myself or put out my emotions and stuff into. I feel like everybody kind of sort of has one like that. For me, it's always been poetry and stuff. So I write all my poetry down like that. Somewhere along the line, a couple months later, I was rummaging through a couple loops and samples and trying to make a couple beats and music and stuff. And I heard a guitar riff. It wasn't this one that you hear actually on the track. So the one that you hear on the track is actually me playing a cover of the loop that I heard, because I heard the loop and I was like, man, if it only just went this way and I could be able to use that. So then I went ahead and did it. So I changed a couple of chords inside of it and I made the loop myself. And then I was like, you know what? I think this and this kind of sort of will work out well together. So then, yeah, and then boom, that's how the magic happened with that. So yeah, it was kind of sort of lyrics happened first, but it didn't all click until like I actually created the background instrumental music for it and decided to put it all together.
It's kind of like, yes, maybe the lyrics came first, but there was like a simultaneous creation of both this music that originally was a loop, but you've made some changes when you played it on the guitar. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Like at that point, it's you're referencing it, but you're not actually playing what was played there before.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
One of the things that sticks out to me in that guitar line, and also because, the title of the song is Grounded, the instrumental part is your guitar with some other elements in there as part of the finger picking or however, I don't know exactly how you're doing it, but
I mean, finger picking. Yeah.
But like the lowest note is this kind of nice descending into the ground, kind of this floating down kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, the chords that you're playing, every time I hear that, I keep picturing this like something that is either slowly descending or slowly pulling you down all at the same time, kind of this quicksand feel, or even just floating in a feather. So I in my mind, it's this simultaneous thought, but also the chords as they're playing, it seems like the notes that are going in there are also following that bass line down. But then just before you restart the phrase, there's kind of some higher notes that flip up there. So I keep picturing this like as it floats down, and then all of a sudden this kind of climbing back up just enough to not descend all the way down. Yeah. So I don't know. In my mind, I'm picturing that. You knew that there was a sound that you wanted to create, and then you combined it with these lyrics. You kind of mentioned and talked about it earlier, but how did you finally decide to put those two together and make it happen?
Honestly, and let me just say, I love your description of imagery for that, because literally that's exactly how I picture it all the time. I'm very visual when it comes to music and sounds. And in part, I just feel like I'm kind of sort of like always writing, or like I'm a screenwriter of some sort or a director, and I'm kind of just like going through and I'm just imagining this movie, this scene that I'm trying to create. And then it's like, okay, well, how can I emulate that through the sounds that I am not necessarily hearing, but feeling for some odd reason. And so I just loved your whole entire description of it, because that's literally what I think of every time. I mean, even before I was just sitting here, I closed my eyes. I just love to just sit back and really listen deeply to what it is, and then be able to see exactly what it is that is being emulated through the sound. But as far as it goes for like what kind of made it all click and at what point, what made me bring it all together, I cannot tell you. It was just a random happenstance. And a lot of the time with my music, that's kind of sort of how it happens. It just, I get these moments where I feel an urge or an impulse to just move something. I just follow suit pretty much. And so for this one, when I was creating that backing track, when I was creating that guitar loop, and I was listening to it, I mean, I was throwing all kinds of stuff at it, all types of reverb, compression, and, different little harmonies I could throw in there and stuff. And I mean, I was giving it the works because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was trying to create. And I felt a sudden urge of just like sadness, a deep well of sadness that kind of overcame me. And I had to take a break when I was doing it. I had to take a break. I was very, very emotional inside of that moment. And I knew, I was like, I'm not going to be able to get anything done like this. So I had to step back. I started going back through my poetry and just kind of trying to find a way to ground myself. I was led to that poem specifically, and like when I look back at it now, I'm kind of looking at that poem and I'm like, wow, that's not at all what I was talking about as it is written in the song. But I see now, It's so funny. I'm actually having quite an epiphany right now about it, but I never had a chance to really think about it this much. But when I went and looked at that poem and I just kind of read through it, it gave me the solace that I needed to be able to continue on with that one record, that one project I was working on. When I went back to it, obviously a little tweaking here and there, finding the right melody to be able to go along with it, and solidifying that those lyrics would be able to tell the story that I was trying to tell within that record. It just kind of sort of just came together like that. It was a very chaotic process for this one. And usually I'm not very overwhelmingly that out of place with everything. Usually most of the time I know exactly what I want to sound. I know exactly what I'm going for. I know how to lay it out. I know how many layers I want, harmonies and this and that. This one though was just so different. It was just so different. And I think that's part of the reason why I love it so much, because it's just so real into the fact of not only of what I'm talking about, but how it makes you feel and how you could be able to visualize that feeling.
It's funny, like one of the questions that I'm like been holding on for just a second while you were talking is, you mentioned this idea of throwing everything at it, and in the end, I feel like this is a very simple song, but very emotionally heavy. Yeah. So somehow, I'm curious. So, did you throw in any extra instrumental on top of that, or?
No, not necessarily.
Wow.
No,
okay.
No. A lot of what you're hearing in there is literally just the guitar loop that I kind of created and vocals that are laying over it. That's literally it. I mean, besides like compression, reverb, and pretty much all the plug-in works that you would do for track and stuff. But besides that, I mean, I literally didn't really add much else in there. Honestly, I played around a lot with my vocals because I'm heavily influenced by John Bellion, who's like one of my top favorite artists, lyricists, songwriters. He does it all. So like I took inspiration from him on this track because I was like, it has to be something that's very simple, because it doesn't take a lot to be able to get a message across. You know, you strip every great song down to the bare bones. You know, that's what it comes down to. It's just the feeling and the emotion that is being evoked by what is simply being played. And so I kind of sort of took that approach with it at a certain point. And I was like, you know, I don't need to add all this extra stuff in it, because like I thought about throwing drums and all this other stuff on it. And I was like, no, it doesn't need that. It kind of speaks very well for itself. I didn't add any other instrumentation besides that of my vocals. I played around a little bit with it, kind of put some hidden gems in there. Hopefully some people will catch it, but I'm not going to reveal what it is, but hopefully some people hear what it is in there and stuff. So yeah.
I don't know, and maybe we can get into this at some point. I don't know the original intent of the poem or the lyrics. I want to divide this song into two different sections, and it's mainly where it's you singing on top of the guitar, and then the second part is where I want to say you join yourself to like accentuate all these other, should I say like characters? I don't know, like, and I don't mean like in a play. I mean just maybe these different characteristics. So really my point that I'm trying to say is, in dividing it, I feel that first part is this very lonely, very singular you that is reflecting on maybe a relationship, maybe on, I don't know. I had a few different thoughts about on the way that you're interpreting what you wrote. And some of it I'm thinking about, you know, how thoughts can drag us down, you know, in the metaphor of even like being grounded, keeping yourself from actually being able to explore or be better, to be something else, or being grounded, being sensible. And I mean, right, like with those two words mean such different contexts. And I feel like that first half of the song is this like you alone and not being able, like, it takes that first grounded where it's just like you're grounded, you're not going anywhere. And then the second is more of the like you're grounded, but you're able to, like, you know what you want, you know where you want to go. And I think that's part of there's plenty of other interpretations too, but I keep thinking about like your secondary and third and kind of the echo, I call it the echo voice, but it's the really high, like just kind of reiterating the melody, but as it's such a high floaty, if you were to observe your own self, that would be the voice that would be looking down on you. You know what I mean? I don't know.
No. I mean, I think that's a good way to be able to look at it and describe it. I don't think I've ever personally looked at it that way, though, or had somebody tell it to me that way. But it is a very great way to look at it, because for me, I've always kind of looked at it more so as like, and like I said, this was actually based off a very specific event. I'm not necessarily all too comfortable going into exactly the details of it, but it was a great loss for me. And the loss itself changed me permanently. And so when I listen back onto it, I mean, yes, in a sense, it grounds me, because when I listen to it now, it is something that I know when I feel that the world becomes too much and the weight of it begins to crush on my shoulders and stuff, that I can be able to find myself put back together with this song. But it's funny because when I listen to it, I know exactly what it means to me as of going through that event, which was that I actually was quite literally not necessarily in a state of chaos, but I was in such a state of despair and such a deep well of sadness, and I literally completely lost my mind inside of it. And so that first part is literally, as you hear it describing, I literally fell to the ground, and I was hearing the voice of that person that I lost, and I was frozen, stuck in permanence inside of this ground. It literally felt like the concrete had a hold of me. I literally could not move. I was petrified, scared. It was just so much. It was so much welling inside me. And then you move into the second part. Yes, it's like voices, but their voices is not of other people. It's not of me. It's just so much chaos is going on. I'm screaming, but no words are coming out of my mouth. I'm shouting. I'm reaching for the sky, but my hands are locked. I am stuck, you know, and it was, and I don't, you know, I mean, it's funny for me now, but I mean, I still get moments like that, you know. I was literally in a state of panic, and it took me a really long time to get out of that. So it's like, it's funny that's like the visuals, like there's so many different takes on the interpretation of how the song can be able to go. For me, I'm always just like, I don't know. I like that aspect of it, because I don't like it for everyone to just be like, oh, so it's just about him literally being on the ground, or it's about him finding himself, grounding himself in times of trouble, or I mean, it could be a lot of things, and I want it to be that way. I want it to be open to interpretation, to where people can be able to listen to it and feel it and have it mean whatever it is that they feel like they need it to mean for them. You know, as long as it is something that is helpful, and it is going to be something that is going to be prosperous for them. That's what I want out of it. Not to get all deep and heavy.
No,
it's just really how I was like, this is how I felt.
I felt like going into looking at some of the lyrics, and as you were talking about the specific event that you're referring to in the lyrics, I was picturing that moment when it hurts so bad that you don't know if you'll ever be able to feel something good again. Yeah. And one of the lines that really made me think about that is I fell to the ground, I felt your warmth, it was holding me. And one of the things that I think about in terms of our own, sometimes we get into our own emotional ruts, and I think about how I felt your warmth is this, to me, it felt like sometimes we get so comfortable with how miserable we are that there's a warmth in that. There's a way that it just like, it sucks us in. Yeah. And then it's like, it was holding me. So that's one of those lines that I think about. I thought about a lot as I was listening to this. And I want to actually touch on the last, I don't know what you want to call it, like not the last stanza, not the last, but the last grouping of lyrics that I find kind of fascinating. The way that it is presented, I feel like that left in a mist of gray, I am nothing. And there's kind of, it feels like there's this pause. And then it's like, if you ever leave. I love how the space of silence allows the mind to think that it's one interpretation, but then it's on another thing.
Yeah,
So every time I hear that, it just kind of gives me a little bit of this chill that I really appreciate that.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
I know there's not really a question there. I'm just throwing out some interpretations because it feels there wasn't really a question there. But I do have a question about the decision. Was this the original poem, or did you cut anything, or did you add anything?
Oh, I cut a lot. I cut quite a lot. Yeah. So the beginning portion of this. So I always talk about it like stanzas. For a song like this, since it's just basically 4 groupings of lyrics and they just repeat itself, I always order it inside of a fashion of stanzas because that's how it was created. It was stanzas for a poem. So the very first 2 groupings at the very beginning are OG, original from the poem, straight up. But the last 2, I did have to go through and rework them and rephrase them. The reason why I did it was mostly just for melodic purposes. I wasn't able to fit all the words into it. And I was just like, okay, we have to shorten it, sweeten it up. And I also had to make sure that at a certain point, I wanted it to not be so specific as to what the song itself could possibly be about. But I wanted it to be vague enough to be able to have multiple people be able to listen to it and kind of sort of get different interpretations on it. Because this is a very interpretive piece, I feel. So at the end of the day, when I look back on that poem, I mean, the poem is like, if I was to read it out loud to you right now, we'd probably be sitting here for about 2-3 minutes. Because it's a very long poem. It was very long. It was a spoken word piece that I wrote up. I mean, I just kind of just laid it out in like 2-3 pages. I cut quite a lot from it to be able to create this piece. That section itself resonated the most. And yeah, so I did have to go through, took a lot of reworking, rewriting a little bit. And like I said, I wanted that vague, and I shouldn't say vague. I wanted it to be more open. I wanted it to be much more spacious. I'm very big on space and as far as it goes for musicality and stuff. So I wanted to have it be open. I wanted to be very spacious, but I still wanted to maintain the aspect of vulnerability and emotional awareness and flow to be able to go through it.
One of the things that I appreciate so much about music and lyrics together, one thing that you can do through composition or arrangement, however you want to call it, is that you can say the exact same lyrics you did before, but recontextualize it with music. And that I think that's one of the things that I love about how you did this piece, because that's why I said I divided it into these 2 sections, because I feel like there's this alone, vulnerable person in the beginning, and then kind of reevaluating all the things that you've said before, and then there's this context of all these beautiful lines. I mean, sorry, I don't mean to be like,
no, you're fine. I'm trying my best not to just. I'm really bad at taking compliments and stuff, so I'm just kind of sitting here like, I don't know how to feel or to say about this, but yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean. You could just say it is what it is, and the parts that you put into it have a very genuine quality. And I think, like, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know some of those parts. Did you practice and write them out? I mean, not necessarily literally write them out, but have them written, like you're like, okay, at this part right here counts, and then like I'll do this. Or did you have some improvisation that you were doing that you just kind of let the emotion carry you? Because I feel it has that quality. Not to say that any part of it doesn't feel polished, but it has that part where it feels like the emotion took you on kind of your own melodic journey. I hate the way I said that, but
no, honestly, no, I love how you said it, because that's actually like perfect, because that's exactly how I feel about it. That's like pretty much what did happen. I tend to do stuff like that a lot with most of my music. I ad-libs and just backing vocals and stuff like that. I don't necessarily plan how to do that stuff. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I always put it like this. I do what feels right. Yeah. I just do what feels right. If it feels right to me, I literally just throw it in there. And then if it needs a little tweak or something like that, just aligning it maybe, or if somebody tells me, if I, trust somebody to listen to some music that I'm thinking about releasing, have them listen to it and they'll be like, yeah, I probably wouldn't add that there, or I probably might move that a little bit, then I'll readjust it. But for the most part, for this one here, I was in the booth crying at home. And yeah, like that very last belt and everything, like I was screaming that. And I remember specifically because I was so mad at myself because I wasn't able to finish it. I did the belt and I stopped and I had to pause it. And I was like, I can't get rid of it. So then I had to go back and let it play again and then like continue on that same belt. So like in that case, like, yes, like that one was like very much like, okay, kind of sort of had to plan that one through. I just kind of wanted to just go through again, just like layer after layer after layer after layer, because that's just all that I was hearing at the time. When I listened back to it again and again while I was making it, I was just like, something needs to go there. I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm just going to feel this and I'm just going to let it be on the track. And however it comes out, I will make it work. I'm sure it will be fine, because this track in particular, I felt like I needed to be as raw and genuine as possible with it. The belts, the falsettos, and all of that stuff. Yeah, like literally all that's like literally within real time. Every time I went ahead and just pressed that record button, and I just literally for the last minute and a half, 2 minutes of the song, it was literally just me just going through, just listening to it in my headphones like we are now. And I'm just literally just belting out whatever it is I felt. If I felt like screaming, I screamed. If I felt like a whisper, I whisper. If I chanted a little bit, I'll chant. And then I go back through afterwards and just kind of sort of just level it out, pan here, pan there. Let's add a little more reverb and delay here to make it sound more forward, make it sound backwards, center it. The mixing and mastering engineer in my mind kind of goes to work as he's like, ooh, we have stuff to play with now. Yeah. I give myself the raw material, with the emotion that's in there. And then I go into engineer mode and it's like, okay, how can I make it to where this sounds like a collaborative piece at the end, but yet still maintain to have the emotional charge that was put into it,
What's your favorite part in this piece? I mean, favorite is kind of a weird thing to say when it's like a really emotionally charged, but that, like something maybe that you're super proud of, or the part that really gets you every time when you listen to it.
Right off the bat, like the first thing that automatically comes to mind is just the very tail end riff that I did. That kind of sort of is like the nail in the coffin for me. For some odd reason, I hear that line and it damn near brings me to tears every time. And I don't know why, but it's just that one little line. It's just a little like a 3-note step down that I do, and I hear it and it's just like, I don't know, it's like when you tighten a bow tie on like a little, like a, I don't know, son, daughter, I don't know. Yeah. You tighten the bow tie and you're just like, like everything's complete. And then you see it and you see the smile on the kid. And it's just, I feel like that's me looking back at my younger self with that part. And it just, I don't know. I feel like crying every single time, but I'm the most proud of that part right there specifically. The rest of the song, I'm like, it's cool. But that part there for me, I'm just like, oh, wow. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird little tidbit. Yeah.
Why did you pick this song as a song you wanted to talk about today?
It was the most relevant song that I had kind of sort of to date. It is a very special song for me. It was a turning of the tide song because last year I made a lot of music that not necessarily questionable, but it was very much just like I was still trying to find the sound that I wanted to make and the sound that I wanted to start putting out there for people to listen to. And this one is extremely different than everything that I did last year. But this one felt the most like me. It felt the most like the kind of music, not that it's the music that I want to make, but the music that I already have within me, and I have to make this. If we were somehow able to go to each person and listen to the biofrequency of each individual in the world, I feel like this is the kind of sound you would get from me. At the deepest depths of my soul and every fiber of my being, that is the sound that you get. And as sad as it can sound at first, there is a beauty to that darkness. And I come to accept that about myself. And so, yeah, that's for this one here, it, in the lightest terms, it hit different. This one just hits really different. So yeah, of course I would want to talk about it because I absolutely love this one, and it's a great song. It's a great record, and I'm super proud of it.
Are you expecting to put this within like a larger context of like a full length album, or
eventually? So that's how it originally started. I wanted to do an entire album project curated around a sound that's like this, but I've kind of sort of moved into a different direction. I'm still going to continue to work on singles here and there and start releasing it as life just kind of sort of just got very busy for me all of a sudden. So
only when you got something really important to do does life get really, really busy.
Yeah, like literally. So we're planning on getting that all together at some point. A lot of the upcoming releases that I do have for the rest of this year, a lot of it is going to be very similar to that sound. It's going to kind of sort of be like a introductory period a little bit, just kind of tease people into the project whenever I decide to finish it and drop it.
Just keep recording, keep getting things done, and share even your drafts. I you know, from somebody who likes to see kind of the point A to point B process, there's value in even our first attempts. Like, it gives people that are writing music hope. Yeah. Like first time writers or something like that don't feel like whatever they're creating is enough. And I feel like that's always, I don't know. I don't mean to get up on my soapbox about this, but I'm always like, I call it recording hesitancy. Like, just get something, record it on your iPhone, whatever you want to do.
Dude, you
just
sound
do
like
it.
me, man. When I be talking to people, I'm like, dude, sometimes you just have to, you just got to take that leap of faith. Just go ahead, record it. It doesn't matter if it sounds good or not. Just get it out there. Just do it. I don't know. Sometimes that's just kind of sort of the push that you just need. So, because I was the same way, very much a lot of the time.
Champagne is also a band podcast is proud to support Jubilee Cafe. Jubilee Cafe is a free weekly meal program at Community United Church of Christ, 805 South 6th Street in Champaign, Illinois. Jubilee Cafe serves a home-cooked meal from 5 to 6:30 each Monday. Their mission is to feed hungry people by cooking healthy, delicious meals and by serving their guests restaurant-style with servers waiting on tables. Jubilee Cafe is open to anyone who cares to eat with them. Because food insecurity among students is so high, they serve students as well as others in and around the Champaign-Urbana community who struggle with hunger. Meals are free to all and will be served each Monday evening. Located in the accessible lower level of the building at 6th and Daniel Streets in Champaign. For more information on the meal or how to volunteer, go to the Jubilee Cafe CUCC Facebook page or email them at jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. That's jubilee.cafe@community-ucc.org. Welcome back. So, IamLostTwo. What is your favorite Champaign-Urbana venue?
Ooh, that is a loaded question. I'll tell you that now. I feel like the most stereotypical one would be like Canopy Club or something like that, or Rose Bowl. I got a bone to pick with everybody on that one.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't had a bad experience, but like I don't feel like I've had the greatest experience with a lot of the venues and gigs that I've gotten around Champaign-Urbana, honestly, especially as of late. But if I do have to have one, honestly, my favorite when it was here was Nola's Rock Bar. Honestly, I loved it. I thought it was great. The stage was small, it was very narrow and this and that, but I just thought that the ambiance of the place was just unlike any other. So I really appreciated it, and sound quality was honestly like really good there. I was such a fan of it. I was like, oh my gosh, oh man, as a technician, I was like, this is kind of great. It was so great, but yeah, I don't know. Well, now that's gone, so I mean, I guess it can't be a favorite. Next favorite, I guess, would be Canopy. It hurts my heart to say it, but Canopy Club. No offense, you guys. If in case you guys are listening to this, like, please don't fire me. Right. But yeah, Nola's was like that'll probably be my top one for sure around here.
You kind of opened up a little bit of a can of worms here, and that so honestly, let's, instead of it being like this is what they've done wrong, let's just talk about what venues could do in Champaign-Urbana that would make it more welcoming, or whatever specifically doesn't feel right to you. What could they do to make that better?
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily that they done anything wrong. I will admit that up front. A lot of the issues or problematic things that I have witnessed or experienced have always been more so, I feel like, been on my end. And it's just because of simply just the kind of artist that I am and the genre and audience that I necessarily pertain to. So with that being said, I don't think it's necessarily anything on their part that they did anything wrong per se. I'll never say that. The certain things that I feel like that could be done better would just be just general professionalism as far as it goes for, communication with artists, about staging and timing, set lists and etc. Just general communication, which I feel like has kind of sort of been something that as of late has been lacking a little bit. As far as it goes for just across the board, whether you're on campus, DIY house shows inside of Urbana Rose Bowl, or, downtown Champaign, performing over at Tap Pour Bros, Maze, and all these other places. It's just been kind of sort of just a lack of communication as far as it goes for professionalism when it comes to relation between the venue and the artists themselves. That is one thing I pride myself on, is being very timely. I communicate whether or not I am able to do something, whether I can do something, if I can be able to aid, if I, am lacking in something, if I mess up on something, I am very apologetic. I am quick to be able to correct mistakes that I make. And I am also very quick to be able to make sure that I am timely and even early if I can be, So that is something that I just kind of grew up on. And from other places outside of this town, from other venues that I have played in, played in a couple in Chicago. I played in a couple recently in St. Louis, Indianapolis, over inside Decatur, Peoria. And I noticed that there is a certain standard of professionalism inside of these different venues that you go to. And they're not all going to be the same. Everybody has their pros, everyone has their cons. But as far as it goes for that, the standard, once it is set, it is set. And, people will hold you to that and they'll let you know. It seems like there has been a carelessness that I've noticed over the past couple of years here that I've kind of sort of felt has been kind of sort of been like a slippery slope, and we're kind of sliding down a little bit.
Right.
And that's like my one own little tidbit on it.
Hopefully people don't see this as me justifying it or whatever, but I do feel like, not that it should get a pass, but also, honestly, after the pandemic, some of us just don't know how to human anymore, is what I like to say, because it's just like, I don't know if it's like things have gotten out of practice or what, but there is just, I don't know, we need to get back into what that was like before.
Yeah, no. And honestly, I even went as far as just to say, just like, I mean, I'm understanding, people have their own lives. There's certain things that I may not know about that may be going on with the venue themselves. It could be due to lack of staffing and stuff like that. Or, they just don't have the material or the manpower to be able to do things, the funding. I mean, I don't know necessarily what's always going on behind the doors. I don't know what's going on or what the situation is with every single person I interact with, So, I mean, there's a multitude of factors that go into it. Right. I can only just call it out as to how I see it and how it's interpreted from my own experience with them. I try my best not to be able to make it a dig or, what I'm saying, be like, oh, you need to do better. But I mean, at the same time, I'm going to call a spade a spade. Right. If I see something that's happening, that I necessarily don't like myself, I will let it be known. Now, I'm not going to make you feel like a bad person or make you feel horrible about it. Because like I said, I don't know what the situation is. I'm just letting you know exactly how I felt about the whole entire experience. So, and yeah, I do feel like a huge part of that could have been COVID. I mean, we're still suffering, whether people want to admit it or not, we're still suffering a lot of after effects of it. I know I am. I mean, shoot. I mean, just like physically, I wasn't this big prior to COVID. And so, but also like the mental toll of it took a toll on me. Financially, it definitely took a toll for me and my jobs that I had to start curating through in order to be able to, make ends meet. There are people that are literally still suffering the effects of it. So I try my best to be as empathetic as possible. When it comes to these kind of situations.
I really appreciate that you are calling out certain aspects. I mean, honestly, it's one of these things that if those could be corrected, that would definitely make it a much better music scene, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I don't think of that as necessarily a negative. I just feel like that is definitely an opportunity for growth for
Absolutely.
some of these places. And I really look forward to when more venues decide to open up or be available for people to perform at, and I feel like we've had that tipsy, whatever you want to call it, seesaw effect of, I'm sorry, when Urbana starts to do really well, somehow Champaign just doesn't do it as well.
Yeah.
And then it's just like this weird teeter-totter of venue availability and venue closure.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's not easy to be a venue, so I applaud those that do try to make live music a thing that people can see.
Oh yeah.
But anything they can do to just make it better for everybody would be great. I guess my big question is, what makes a good music scene, or what makes a good music community?
I just think that as long as everybody can be able to come together, honestly, keyword, honestly, come together, and as a collective, we can actually support one another, no matter how different the art may be, no matter what kind of venue or lane that another artist may be in, that we could be able to see them, accept them for who they are, and we can welcome them with open arms into our music scene, into our community, and have them, instead of being a person that's like trying to be above them, let's rock alongside with them, because we all have this passion. We all have this love. Clearly, we're out here spending our free time. We could be out doing anything else, but for some odd reason, we all want to come together. We want to get on stage and we want to make music and stuff. And let me tell you, it's not cheap. It's not cheap to do it. Right. It's very time consuming. You have to have a certain amount of love and passion in order to be able to do this. So yeah, as long as, everybody comes together and we can all agree on that factor, I think that's all it really takes to be able to make a great music community. We don't have to have the biggest funds, the biggest venues, the biggest, craziest audiences with the biggest promoters and all this other stuff. We don't have to be the big cities. We can make the scene as big as we need it to be within our own small town, and just with the collective that we have here, which is why I'm such a huge fan of collectives, honestly, because when you're with people who are of like mind, you can create such great opportunities, not only for yourself, but for everyone.
Yeah, the Half House Studios, I enjoy them a lot as a collective, because there's a sense of they're making the opportunity to record like accessible to lots of different people, and it doesn't necessarily have to be just hip hop. It can be all sorts of music. And also they're just great folks anyway.
Yeah.
So
I like shout out to Whip Trip or David Whip Trip and Josh and Mousepat, Alan, Superman, and Nikki V or Nicholas, all you guys inside of Half House. Seriously, like shout out to those guys. Those guys are really great guys. Like honestly, I love the guys to death, man. They're great. They're so awesome. They're funny, but they're awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was curious, what do you think Champaign-Urbana could do better to be a better music community?
Let me start by saying this. So I've stated earlier that one of the kind of the big issues that I found was just more so that I myself am an artist that I feel like it's not, I'm not a very typical kind of artist for the music scene here inside of Champaign-Urbana. And what I mean by that is that I have noticed that within the lane that I kind of sort of roam in is very much hip hop, and a lot of it is very saturated with rappers, whether you would say that they make hype music and stuff like that, or, you know, gangster rap or conscious rap, or however you want to go about it. The music scene here inside of the hip hop genre of town is very saturated with rappers. And I am not a rapper by any means. I will never proclaim to be a rapper. I am not an MC. I am not a cypher artist whatsoever. I am fully on through and through a singer / specifically R&B singer. And yes, we have our singers inside of Champaign-Urbana, inside of our music scene, but for the most part, it seems to be very alternative, indie, folk, and country singers for the most part, which, I mean, I dabble in a little bit, but I would never proclaim to be that kind of artist. You know, I am a singer who also does backing tracks for performances and stuff. Sure, I could do live instrumentation if I want to, but it's just not something I'm akin to doing. So I am a very unique kind of artist who is kind of stuck inside of a playing field where inside of Champaign-Urbana is very marketable to be in either one of the 2 to 3 categories. Either you are a live singing indie folk country artist, or you are in a band, or you are a rapper, or a rapper in a collective of rappers. You don't see very much of R&B singers around much anymore. And I take that a lot more to myself, because I'm like, maybe it is kind of a dying sport that I'm kind of sort of participating in a little bit. So as of right now, I'm kind of sort of on a crossroad where it's like I wish that Champaign-Urbana just had more accessibility or more venues for artists such as myself who actually love performing and who is deeply passionate about music the way that I am. And we go forth and we try to be able to get bookings and gigs for multiple venues to be able to perform in front of the masses and stuff, for people who say that they genuinely love our music. But because we do not fit into those general groupings that you primarily see all the time in Champaign-Urbana, it makes it very hard for us to be marketable, bookable, and so you don't see us around that often, because they are very inclusive. I won't say that they're not. They're very inclusive. They try to be able to put me in where they can and stuff like that. But understandably, when you're going from somebody who is doing this, you know, crazy hard rock banging song, you know, had the crowd all hyped up, to super deep emotional, you know, bliss, you know, of a singer, and then you're going right back to it, you know, it kind of does throw off the scheme a little bit of a showcase or to an event. So you have to play your cards right when it comes to those kind of artists. I completely understand that. It's just, I do wish that there was much more of a lane or avenue for artists such as myself, because I do know of others that are like that, and they kind of are struggling a little bit too. And one of the big issues that we've been kind of sort of coming back to all the time is like, well, do we continue to try to fight to be able to find our lane here in Champaign-Urbana, or do we expand out and try to search elsewhere? It sucks, because it's like, man, we have such a good scene here. We have an incredible scene here. We have people coming from out of town, coming down from Chicago, up from St. Louis, from left and right, east and west, just to come here to Champaign, to be able to perform, to collaborate, to be able to be a part of this family that we have here. But like every family, though, there seemingly will be a scapegoat. So there's a black sheep, and there's always just that one little outcast person that is just like, they're kind of weird. Like, they're still part of the family, but they're kind of weird. And that's kind of sort of how we felt a little bit. Or me, myself, I'll talk about myself. I feel like that one weird cousin Vinny that everyone just kind of sort of just, they're like, yeah, he's there, but so that's kind of my one thing that I've been kind of noticing over the past couple of years that I wished was just a little bit better, which I feel like that speaks volumes. I feel like, the Champaign Urbana, because like I said, it's a great scene. It's so great. I am so thankful to be a part of it, and as much as I have been. But I have noticed, though, that through a lot of past experiences, especially as of recent, that there isn't clearly a space for me just yet, and for the type of art that I want to bring to people.
We have some experimental noise artists or others that are, fringe, and I feel like they also have that hard, how do you fit in with a particular group? The thing that I always see with those genres is there's a tendency to, in order to be inclusive, is that what they'll do is they'll just create a special show that includes those fringe artists. Yeah. And instead of bringing it into more of a multi-genre show, it then becomes its own genre, which I don't know whether that in the end makes it more more possible, or it ends up just making it stand out even more as kind of an outlier.
Yeah.
I can see where you may not exactly fit into the round hole with your square peg, maybe the hole just needs to be bigger. I don't know, so then everything will fit. But I hadn't thought of your music in that way. If you were to just label you, I mean, you could, if you wanted to, and I'm not saying that this is right, but you could say that you have maybe an alternative sound on some things, but but it seems like then you'd be just denying the roots of your own sound, and maybe that would be you trying to squeeze more into, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that it might make you able to fit in more into a genre or have more of a place, but then it would just not be you.
Yeah. So it's been something I've kind of been dabbling in. I mean, I've told you before, a lot of people do know, like, I have affiliations with Hip Hop Collective. I'm with Half House Studios, the Hideout, with all those collectives, it's always been, artists, coming together, and we create great music together. And a lot of it is very experimental, you know what I mean? Because we all come from very different backgrounds as far as it goes for music taste. But it was also within a lot of those groupings that, group sessionings and lock-ins where which honestly, those are the best. I love those, like artist lock-ins where we're locked in for like 24 hours into a singular place and we're just writing music all the time. Oh, those are great. But it's also within those realms of experiences and placements that I always end up in, that I always happen to notice that I'm just that one person that's kind of out on the outskirt a little bit when it comes to the things that I genuinely would want to do and would want to make. And I did find myself, for a time being, I tried to be a rapper. I mean, I'm on quite a few rapper tapes and stuff like that. Hence this last Half House album that we dropped. I'm on a couple of those actually rapping, I'm doing all kinds of styles and stuff. But it's clear as day to be able to notice that, like, oh man, he's a singer. He's a soulful R&B singer. You can tell he loves that. And I do. I love it so much. It's a bit of a stretch for me to try to, insinuate myself into these different lanes and avenues of genres that I know I could be okay at, but it's not where my heart is, and that's not where my passion is, and it shows. I feel like if it's enough for me to be able to literally sit there and notice it, I know that the audience will notice that as well, as much as I'll try to play it off.
And I was just thinking about, one thing that, and this is regardless of genre, I feel like most audiences can spot a fake, someone who's not being entirely genuine.
Oh yeah.
And so if you weren't necessarily genuine with your style or with how you wanted to, I don't know, perform, I think that it does sound like that could be very potentially disastrous, right? It wouldn't fit.
Very problematic. Not just for like a performance, but I mean, just relation between the artist and the audience. I mean, essentially I guess business terms wise, right? We're a brand. Each one of us is a brand. We create our social medias, our logos and everything. And we post our content for the audience and for content users to be able to eat up and stuff like that, right? So if you are being disingenuous with your brand and your labeling and you don't have the heart behind it, it ultimately will reflect and show out to your audience, and they will see that, and it will cause a rift and a disconnect, which is something that I dread doing. If I'm going to do this, I want to be 100% as honest and as genuine as I possibly can be, because I feel like that is probably the one aspect about me that people do like is what I like about myself, and I appreciate it when people are the same way with me, because I know if it just relatively even feels a little bit fake, just one misalignment out of hair, I'm just like I back away from it. I can't. I don't want anything to do with it. So I want to be able to reciprocate that back. So, and I would hate for other artists to have to go through that kind of experience, because it could be quite a bit of a turmoil. You can lose yourself inside of that, because then you're playing the guessing game. It's like, do I want to try to, manipulate and force myself and morph myself into something that I'm not, to be able to fit into this group of people who are getting more shows and more audience feedback and just getting a lot more attention than I am? Or do I want to stick with the genuinity that I pursued, through my art, that helps me to feel good, and I know that it helps make the lesser few, kind of sort of see, even if that means that I'm not going to be able to be in with the big crowd, get on the big stages and this and that, because like I said, it could be hurtful to your career, it could be hurtful to you as an artist, and it could be hurtful to your audience. It's a domino effect all the way around. That's kind of part of the reason why I brought it up, because it was one thing that's been burning on my mind as I listen through some of these podcasts and stuff, that I've always noticed. I was like, man, everybody's talking so nice. Let's be honest about a couple things. And that was one of the ones that, I want to speak for some of the little guys out there that I know specifically who are trying to just break out into the music scene here, and they find themselves struggling. And I hear them and I'm like, you're so good and so talented, and it breaks my heart to hear that you're not up on these stages with us like this. No matter how many times I introduce them to, to network with some of the event promoters, to the venues and stuff, it's just a lot of times, unfortunately, there's some talents that just fall through the cracks, and I don't want them to.
Champaign is Also a Band podcast is proud to support Exile on Main Street. Exile on Main Street, located in the old train station building at 100 North Chestnut Street in downtown Champaign, has been helping to build record collections since 2004. Carrying a wide array of new and used LPs, CDs, and video games. Exile on Main Street has something for just about any music enthusiast and old-school gaming devotee. Exile also hosts regular free live music shows on its stage, so be sure to check out their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for the up-to-date details on the next upcoming event. Open 7 days a week, they can be reached by phone at 217-398-MAIN. That's 217-398-6246. Welcome back. So, IamLostTwo.
Yep.
What is your favorite non-musical thing or things?
I have quite a few, but the biggest one that comes to mind is, I don't know if you'll know the terminology, but like urban exploration or urban Xing. Okay. I'm kind of very big into going out and finding like abandoned places that just like have been not necessarily run down, but has been forgotten about, neglected. I like going to these places. I explore them. I like going there, exploring them. I love reading up on the history on some of these places, just like hearing about the stories that have been held within the walls or within the air of just the area itself. It's just, I don't know. It's so different. It's almost like in some of these places, it's like walking into like a dystopian novel, you know, where it's just like desolate and just empty. There's no more human life and this and that. And you're like, wow, I'm actually in that right now. It's chilling. It's so chilling. Actually, I was going to ask you about the spot that I saw back over there. It was an abandoned barn.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I kind of want to check that out later on, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah. No, so even though it's called urban Xing, it would be any place that would have an abandoned.
Yeah.
Is there a favorite place that you've found that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. St. Louis, Cement Land. Where do I start with this? So in St. Louis, there's the City Museum, right? Like there, it's all kind of, it's like super cool, right? It's like really weird, wonky. They got like the bus hanging off the rooftop on the edge and everything. They got all these crazy creations of like intertwined industrial material that's just on the top. And there's a slide that goes through like 5 floors of it and everything. Like it's just such a cool spot. Well, the person that created that same museum was actually working on another spot called Cement Land, and the premise behind it was that it was supposed to be like a Disney World esque with castles and bridges and all this stuff of things that were pretty much just made out of like literally construction material, like concrete and like booms off of like huge construction lifts and stuff like that. They made towers from just scrap metal and everything. Anything that like all the material that they were going to use to be able to build this amusement park was completely recycled and stuff. And it was a really great idea. Unfortunately, he died in the process of it being built. So after his death, there was the committee and everybody, you know, the city came together to try to be able to see if they could be able to still be able to fund it, to be able to, you know, finish the creation. Unfortunately, just kind of fell through the cracks and was forgotten about. And, you know, they kind of sort of just put the red tape on it and just left it be. They just didn't have the money to be able to demo it all. So it still stands there to this day, unfinished. It was one of those spots that I found out through a mutual friend of somebody who is also an urban Xer. They recommended it to me. I was like, well, heck yeah, I got to check it out. Like, of course. So, I mean, it's huge. We're talking like, we're talking at the very least, like 150 acres worth of just space of just raw material that was constructed into bridges and castles and underground passageways with rivers and streams that flow through and stuff. And I mean, it's so beautiful. Like literally, if you ever watch like Walking Dead or like any type of like, you know, zombie flick where it's like, oh, all the humans are gone and, you know, the buildings are kind of coming down. Last of Us actually is a really good example. Really, that's one that I've watched. I love Last of Us. That's like exactly what it looks like. You literally see the man-made structures overtaken by Earth, you know, by nature again with this spot, and it's just so beautiful to see. Absolutely one of my absolute all-time favorite spots that I've ever been to. So yeah,
is it sad that my first thing when you said that it was going to be like an amusement park, but it was named Concrete Land, that I wanted their slogan to be like, life is hard.
No, because that would have been really good though.
Right? Yeah. Concrete Land, life is hard. But oh man, and I mean, I haven't necessarily fully explored that, but there is something about finding something abandoned where you're like, one, you feel so special in a certain way, like, because you're like, when's the last time somebody went in and looked at this and this kind of space that I can observe, and it's just for me at this point, you know?
It is in St. Louis. I want to say it is on the east side of the river, just before you get into the downtown area. So it's like a little bit northeastern of the downtown area from it all. Yeah, if you ever get the chance, just you don't have to actually go in, because I understand. Understandably, I will, you know, precursor, cautionary, you know, a lot of the places that you go to, you know, obviously trespassing and stuff like that, you want to be within legal limits and stuff like that. If you want to push the boundaries that far, you can. Me personally, it depends on the spot, but I actually I just kind of go through city halls a lot of times, and I'll ask city halls, or I'll call the local police department and stuff, and I'll, you know, let them know, you know, and ask them, like, okay, like, how can I be able to gain access into these places? A lot of times they're very accommodating about it. Wow. Honestly, I've actually had some escort me a couple times, and it was like really cool. Like, yeah, it gave me a whole new outlook on law enforcement and everything because of that. And we got to chatting and talking, and just, you know, it's a great way to network and just make new friends and have new experiences. So yeah, like I highly encourage it to anybody, you know. So yeah,
that would be one thing I would be a little concerned about, especially if it's kind of an abandoned property. One thing that we sometimes take for granted in terms of construction is that the ground below us is secure. And if you're walking into a much older house, you don't know if those support structures are still holding. So, and even if you fall 10 feet, you could still really mess yourself up.
Actually, funny enough, that's actually happened to me before. And so, that's very true. Seriously. Yeah. It's a very serious. Yeah. You have to be very careful when it comes to stuff like that, especially if you absolutely have no clue or any idea about construction and what you're walking into, you know what I mean? Especially with sites like that. So, yeah.
So, I guess as a cautionary tale, I would say, do your due diligence.
Yeah.
And check, make sure. And you know what? Standing off to the side where you know it's safe and taking pictures or using binoculars or whatever. I'm just as a disclaimer for this podcast. I'm not encouraging anyone to trespass, but
please,
also there are interesting opportunities, especially like as you said, is to approach City Hall. You might even have somebody that's like, oh, I know about that place, and be able to tell you all about it. So bonus, you get even more information than you would have just by yourself. So that is, I love that. I love, especially, what is so beautiful about how nature, or even just natural materials or even unnatural materials, degrade, and like there's this odd beauty in it. And I agree. That's something I find really fascinating. It's just the degradation of materials and seeing either nature take its course and like reclaim something.
Yeah. I've always kind of sort of been like obsessed with that aspect. But I guess another way that I kind of look at it is also just like the natural regression back to the median, or, you know, it's a mathematical term where, you know, eventually, no matter how far, you know, of an outlier you may go on a spectrum, whether you are far into the positives or far into the negatives, at some point we always have to regress back to the mean or back to the middle. And so I think that factor is kind of true with life itself, especially we see it all the time within nature. You know, no matter how bad things may get inside of a prairie field, you know, you can be able to burn that sucker a whole bunch of times. Eventually, that they do that as a restoration act to be able to nurture the soil so that you could have new growth come in. And so, like, and you see storms come and go and bypass and destroy all these things. Trees are knocked down, branches and this and that. But then out of all of that, you see so much beauty and growth come back from it, from the destruction. And just, I don't know, that aspect about it always kind of just rummages through my head whenever I'm inside of these places. It's always like a gentle, kind reminder to just know that, you know, throughout it all, even if it's been abandoned and lost and been forgotten about, that doesn't make it any less beautiful, and that doesn't make it any more damage. You know, it's just new growth, new life that is being sprung about through it all. And I'm always reminded of that every time I go to any of these places like that.
I Am Lost Two, thank you for being on the show and coming all the way out here and chatting with me about your song Grounded, the Champaign-Urbana music scene, and your favorite non-musical thing, which I feel like all of these items we could talk forever and ever, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me come out, man. Seriously, I am so appreciative and grateful just to be able to have this opportunity. Thank you for listening to Champagne is Also a Band podcast. This is IamLostTwo reminding you, great music is out there. Go find it where you live.
That's a wrap.
Champagne is also a band.
You almost have an NPR voice. It's so good.
Studio South Peter on the inside.